Okay, the Fitch-Rona EMS Commission meeting is called to order. It's 7 o'clock. Patrick, can you do a roll?
Yep, I'll be taking over roll call for Michelle tonight. So
Okay,
we'll start with Hilla,
Here.
and Strassman,
Here.
Roberts,
Here.
Cronin,
Present.
Johnson is excused, Kaiser McHenry is excused, Lonsdorf,
Here.
and Schnapp.
here.
And I don't remember if Sue said she was coming tonight or not. I think she said she was going to be out of town, so no Luganbuehl. So we do have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. I assume there's no public comment.
You are correct.
And let's move on to review and approval of the meeting minutes from July 21st. Wow, it's a long time ago.
I think you have the personnel agenda, you have the finance agenda.
I have I got the wrong one. Here, okay. Guess what? I don't have
The
Put
date
the
is
wrong one out.
No-
Anyhow, we'll go ahead and approve the minutes from the
November,
last meeting, which should be December or
November 17th.
Okay. Any comment? If not, a motion to approve the minutes is submitted.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed?
Lonsdorf will abstain. I wasn't here.
Okay, thank you. The minutes as submitted are approved. Then I guess you move on to the chief's report.
Sure, I'll throw it up there on the screen. So this is kind of the year end, not even kind of, it is the year end report. The one we see in January goes to the end of last year. So we ended up at 2022 with 4,267 calls. That was a 2.3% increase for the year from the previous year. I went back and looked, so I think I've shared with you in the past, I usually budget for a 3% increase in calls. Historically, over the last 46 years now, we see roughly about a 5% increase. So 2.3% is not unheard of, right? That's an average. One of the things to note, and we'll kind of see what happens from here on out, but if you look at the month of December, we actually did 427 calls in the month of December. The previous amount that we've had, the most in 1 month we have ever done before, is 381. So that was a significant jump. Our crews were really pretty busy. Again, can't really tie it to anything, but pretty significant increase in call volume in 1 month. So that's there. So it's a congratulations to our crews that just continue to keep running on and doing what they do. Otherwise, the rest of the numbers you'll see there by municipality. I'm working on the year-end report. We'll see that either next month or probably more in March. It has to be done by the end of February. So you'll see that in March with the summary, the year-end summary of everything you see there. Again, pointing out what I've mentioned before, starting to track that out of resources number. That last month alone, there was 14 times where all of our trucks were out on calls. And then year to date, so in all of 22, there was 14 times where we did not have enough ambulances and somebody had to come into our district and cover for us. Majority of those times, and I do have the specific numbers if anyone wants it, but I would say the vast majority of those numbers times is the city of Madison. Handful of times it would have been the city of Middleton. If you go over to Verona, we usually get a closer truck out of Middleton, but that'll be a number we keep an eye on, with as well as that growing number of all those trucks that are out. A number you'll see there this month that I hadn't put on there before, in that same area under out of resources, it's that unit hours utilization. This came up actually in a conversation I had with Terry and Derek. One of their requests, it came about looking at an hours of utilization. I put the number together. I don't know whether I'll continue to report it, so I did some digging. Essentially what hours utilization is if we do the math and says we have 3 trucks on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, that those are the total number of hours we have available for ambulances to respond. And then if I add every hour that all of those ambulances are out of service, it comes up to 20%. So essentially you could look and say at 80% of the time, our ambulances aren't moving anywhere. To me, it's not a great reporting number because that really doesn't take into account that all of our ambulances may be on calls at the same time. As you look at the previous numbers, right? Just because we're sitting there 80% of the time doesn't mean that we don't have 3 or 4 calls coming in at the same time. So that's the number that's out there because it was asked for. To me, it's not really a super great number. Other stuff you'll see there, right? A little bit higher, 11 calls per day. If you remember, I reported a few months ago with our Flex grant that we got from the State Department of Health, we purchased some IV pumps. So December was a meeting with all of our full-timers and our part-timers to go through that IV pump training. And then, January 1st, those pumps went on the trucks. They've actually gotten used a couple times already in the first couple of weeks. Some of them with medications. A lot of it have just been practicing to get more comfortable with them should we need to give medications. But that's been the focus this month is proficiency with those pumps. Other stuff you see there, the usual numbers, day of the week, hours of the day, municipalities, top reasons for calls. Another one to point out is those calls by station is historically, and it still is with here, that station number 2, right, the one right in the middle there out of Marketplace, does the majority of the calls. But it was a really close second this month between Verona and station number 3. Historically, station number 3 is one of the lower call volumes. But with the acquisition of New Fitchburg, their call volume is stepped up. As far as the aging report goes, everything looks like where it should be. It's kind of been a recurring theme here. The 180 days is way above that 15% that we want. It has been for a few months now. I did share our billing company, the person who primarily does our calls, had some family issues going on, so it was really just playing catch up with our account. So trying to keep an eye on that and get that number back down to that 15%. Once we get out over 180 days, those, we don't consider them uncollectible, but the majority of those go to the collection agency. They require kind of a bigger, deeper dive to get those paid. Otherwise, there's our numbers. End of the year, we ended up with those numbers that you see right there, significantly higher than the previous year. And I'll kind of show some of that in the in-house budget. So we're doing just fine towards the end of the year here. Our assigned balances haven't, nothing changed from the previous month. From the previous year, we did spend some of the FAP funds. FAP is that money we get from the state. We did sponsor 4 EMTs from the Verona Fire Department in their class. So that actually paid for their course, their tuition, and their testing. And then we got November, December here is when we get our interest payments on our CDs in our healthcare retirement account. So that's why you'll see that number change. No donations in December, and our January milestones. So this is 22 years for me, starting January 2nd would have been my 22nd year here with Fitch-Rona. And then David Snow, he was hired in January as well. This will be his 18th year. And as I'll share with the numbers here in a minute, David actually has put in his retirement papers with us. So his technically the last day he worked at the end of December. He's vacationing out short of 2 days. He's got 2 half days coming up in the next 2 months here. His official last day is March 3rd, I believe. So we are in the process of we do internal promotion or internal hirings from our LTE pool. So we have 6 LTEs who have put in that they are interested in working full time. We like to do that because we know them. It's a very, very flat learning curve for them because they've been here. So we hire, another reason to retain them, but we hire them. But we're next week or 2 weeks, I believe, they'll have that panel interview process. So we'll have that LTE onboarded to fill his spot that first week in March. And then from there, we'll do another LTE process to help increase that pool. Other thing we have going on is the promotion process. So Kyle was when Kyle retired last spring, that opened up a lieutenant's position. Christy and Sarah are our other 2 lieutenants. We worked with them over the course of the last 6 months to try to figure out exactly kind of how we could maybe better utilize the lieutenants, have tried different scheduling changes and some different task things, and really came back down to the need for a third lieutenant. So we did redefine and gave that position some more responsibilities, kind of clarified a lot of those responsibilities, and we're also currently then now conducting a promotion process for the next lieutenant. We have 2 applicants from internal in that, and they're going through that hiring process as well. Other notes I have here for the chief's report, we talked about the hiring process, the audit. Michelle has done a really good job about getting the audit started earlier this year, so we're not lagging behind like we were last year and having the municipalities having to wait for us. So the January 30th and 31st, I think, is one of those or both of those days. We're actually starting our audit process already for last year. So I will be reaching out, or Michelle will be reaching out in the next couple of weeks. We always have to do the reporting of the conflict of interest of our commission members. So you'll be getting an email from her just to shoot back that you either do or don't do business with any of our municipalities for conflict of interest. And we'll hopefully have that done by March like we have in the past. Other thing I wrote down is another use of the flex grant that we got was to purchase an electric ATV or a UTV. That actually did get delivered at the end of November. So we've gotten that since the last commission meeting. That's out in Fitch-Rona. It's got most of the parts and pieces in it. A trailer, we've got some lights, waiting on we just got the graphics package, or the graphics proposal sent to us today to get those put on there. We've got a longboard and an insert in there. So there's a patient transport insert in the back of that. So if you're ever out in Fitch-Rona and want to stop by and see it, it is there for us. If we maybe can hold a meeting down there, if we can talk Scott into coming down there, and then you can just you can come see it. Oh, you can drive it up here and you go see it in the parking lot. But it's an electric ATV, so we'll be able to use it out at the Alliant Energy Center, moving through crowds. It's electric. We can use it inside, and eco-friendly for us. So that's kind of exciting as well. Other part I have with my chief's report would be, wait for it to catch up. So here's the unofficial end of the year financial report. This is through the end of December. So remembering some of the things, some of those bills cross over into the new year. We try to be really good about not ordering supplies the last week or two so that we get all of our bills paid. And then there's things that are called the prepaids. So we essentially, they're considered prepaid and costed out. But the rough estimate here then is we were actually about 18% over in our run income. One was volume. Second one being the medical assistance increase reimbursement, Medicare reimbursement increases, and then just more calls. So more in run come than we expected, as well as the contracted events. You'll see the number down there. Those are unbudgeted numbers. So when you see, I kind of explained it when I presented the budget last month. When you see our contracted events, that's what we have billed out for, not just Alliant Energy Center. We did some, the beginning of last year, we actually did some COVID vaccination clinics, CPR classes, sporting events, those things. So the contracted events was $125,000. If you look at our down under expenses where it says overtime, the scheduled overtime was over budget $114,000. Those are the numbers that kind of correlate, right? Because all the numbers we get in from those contracted events are paying for overtime. So it's good that the money that came in was more than the money that we spent in doing those events. Otherwise, the big numbers to look at, I've kind of caught you up over the year what our expenditures were, right? It was fuel, medical supplies, a couple of big repairs we had on trucks and cots. But the thing to look at, our revenues were over 112%, where our total expenses, we were over only 102%. So it looks like we actually should come out a little bit. I mean, in the big picture, we went over budget by 2%, but our expenses, our income actually came up higher than that. So for all those pretty significant repairs we had to do last year, my thought was 2% over was not a horrible place to be at the end of the year. But again, the auditors will be coming and they'll give you that official report probably in March or April. That is what I have for my chief's report.
Okay, thank you, Patrick, and thank you for your 22 years of service, too. Appreciate it. And I hope you're not thinking of retirement.
Every day.
Every day. Any discussion around the presentation? If not, let's move on to review and possible approval of the LTE policy. about, what incentive pay?
Sure, if you want. So I took the chair reports out of here because both of the subcommittees did meet. And I can give you kind of an overview of what the policy is, so everybody has seen it either on one of those two committees. And then I guess I'll share what the overview was, and then if the committees want to kind of just do a little blurb about what you decided at your subcommittee, that would be great. So in the nutshell, the LTE policy, last year we had a subcommittee group of employees trying to reduce mandates for our employees, right, when they get called into work in short notice. One of the suggestions or proposals they had was to provide a pay incentive for our part-timers to come in and cover those short notice shifts. So the incentive being time and a half. So we did a trial period for about 6 months of offering time and a half to see if we could increase the number of times that our LTEs covered those open shifts. In the big picture, at the end of the year, the end of the day, in the trial period, it really didn't make a huge difference in the number of times that LTEs came in. Statistically, it still was about the same. However, discussing with our LTEs, once the time was up, they really did feel that they did, because of that incentivizing, they did prioritize Fitch-Rona as one of the places they would work or come in and work versus some of the other jobs that they did work. So talking it over with Jeff and looking at those numbers, we felt, since I brought it up with the committee of kind of the broken record of all the ALS agencies, the paramedic services out here, we're fighting for the same people. So this is, to me, to keep this incentive, will retain the good LTE pool that we have and potentially can help with recruitment of LTEs to us if we can continue to offer this. There is a financial increase, but it is not. It's estimating, just going back and looking a couple of years, probably about $3,000 to $5,000 in a essentially a cost to running this program. But in the big picture, to keep reliable LTEs, I think it is worth changing our policy to reflect offering incentive pay for less than 24-hour notice. So I think that's a good summary. I guess finance or personnel met last week. Derek is not here, Terry. I don't know if you want to share what your discussion was.
Well, yeah, we, I guess, discussed it and we ended up supporting it and took a vote and recommended bringing it up as submitted to the entire commission.
And same with finance. We recognize that it didn't make that much difference in terms of getting people to take the shifts, but it made a difference in having them want to work here, which is important because we're competing with the other ambulance services to get them to work here.
If I could just say one thing with that, we did make an announcement that we were going to take applications or resumes for LTE paramedics. In the past, it's been, maybe 10, 12 people throughout the area have put in their applications or their resumes. I've received one in the last 2 weeks. So to Patrick's point, we're really competing with Wanakee. McFarland's going paramedic in 15 days, and some of the other departments that are paying equal to what we're paying or more. So I think this is a great incentive to keep people here. We haven't announced with the when I put it out on our website and I put it out on Facebook, we didn't announce the extra time and a half because we wanted to make sure that it went through the commission first. So if it is approved, we will make that announcement, and hopefully that will generate some additional interest in the positions here.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. That's very, very helpful. Any more discussion? If not, I think we're ready for a motion to approve it.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor of approving the proposal for LTE incentive pay as submitted, signify by saying aye.
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 And anyone opposed? Hearing none, the approval of the LT policy as submitted is approved, is given. Thank you. And let's move on to review and possible approval of the policy for family and medical leave, which again was discussed at both personnel and finance, I believe.
Sure, thanks. So I'll do the same thing and just give you a synopsis of what it is, and then I'll let Jeff pipe in. He did most of the footwork on this, so I'm not going to take credit for his hard work. Our previous policy manual had our FMLA policy was kind of embedded in its own little non-represented policy. So this actually took it out, made it its own policy, updated it with kind of some current language, and made some of those things that would say were not quite crystal clear a little bit more clearer for us. So thank you, Jeff, for doing this. So the FMLA, there's federal FMLA and Wisconsin FMLA. They kind of go hand in hand, but they're also just a little bit different. So the majority of the policy that was presented to you is truly templated language. It was vetted through our labor attorney. It was also vetted through Sarah Olson here with the City of Fitchburg's HR department. Again, huge thank you to City of Fitchburg and to Sarah for allowing us to utilize her expertise. In something that I believe Terry said was some good good before bedtime reading to have some Tylenol and fall asleep to for the headache that this is. What I'll do is essentially point out some of the things that we had to define that are able to be defined by an employer that aren't quite defined by FMLA. One of those is defining how leave can be taken. One of the things we defined was that it had to be taken in no less than 12-hour increments, as opposed to taking 1 and 2 hours. So just for the ease of tracking and filling those shifts, we will require that to be taken in 12-hour increments. Second thing that was in there, it talks about one of the things is paid and unpaid leave. So previously, we were following the federal FMLA that said employees are allowed to take up to 12 weeks. We did change in the policy to better define what 12 weeks is. We converted that into shifts. So they work 24-hour or 48 hours a week to 2 24-hour shifts. So we defined that as those 12-hour shifts to better manage it. We started it as well from the day they take it. It is a 12-month rolling calendar year, not a calendar year. I guess a 12-month year, not starting on January 1st. So that calendar moves. It's better defined in there as well. With that time off, we were following federal FMLA that said employees had to use all of their accrued time, so sick time, vacation time, and paid time off before they could take unpaid leave. Wisconsin actually says we have to allow them to take unpaid leave, up to 2 weeks of unpaid leave first, before we force them to use their accrued time. So that is a same 12-week time period. We have to allow them up to 2 weeks if they want to take it unpaid. So that is defined in there. Some language that changes the federal and state law dealing with accrual of benefits, accrual of seniority, that is contradicted in the collective bargaining agreement. So it changes the language in the policy to reflect what was agreed upon in the collective bargaining agreement that is outside of the FMLA guidelines. That includes healthcare as well. So one of the things FMLA requires is the employer to provide healthcare for a different period of time than has been agreed upon in the collective bargaining agreement. So the language is in there that reflects that match. Those were the big highlights that I had. Jeff, would you like to share?
Yeah, no, I think you covered it pretty well. As far as the time, it's actually converted into hours. So 48 hours a week times 12 weeks is 576 hours, I think. So if they can take intermittent leave, they can request intermittent leave, and it's converted to hours. So if they take 5 weeks, for the birth of a child, how many hours 5 weeks is for 48 hours a week. And then they will have up to 576 hours in that rolling 12-month period of time. Makes it much clearer as opposed to what is a week. I think the other thing the policy did is I don't know that in the past we've been really consistent in managing managing people on FMLA when they request it. What do they need to do? What are the forms they need to fill out? What kind of approval do they need to have? What do we need to get back from them in the event they're ready to come back to work, if it's after an extended period of time, or they're helping a family member or loved one out? So I think the policy and the forms that we have attached to the policy will really clearly define what that is and what their physicians need to get back to us. And so I think it's much more comprehensive, and I think it'll lend us to be more consistent in the application of the policy for our staff.
Okay, thank you, Jeff, and thanks for taking the lead in drafting the policy too.
I had help.
Oh, yeah, it really helps clarify it though. It can be a very confusing area otherwise.
And the other thing, in case anyone is wondering, Sarah she's a godsend on a lot of HR stuff for us, but we did run this policy through our attorney as well. And there was a lot of input from them as far as making the adjustments and the clarification of some language. So Sarah definitely started the process for us, and then our attorneys went through and made sure that we were consistent with what the law requires.
And you can correct me if I'm wrong. So the union steward does have a copy of this policy. Is that correct, Jeff? Within the last couple of weeks,
he has the first draft of it, and it just texted him and told him we had to send another one out. But the union was made aware that we were making the changes. The changes he doesn't have are what you and I added as far as the contract language is concerned.
okay. So just a reminder to the commission then, should you approve this tonight, it does proceed. Essentially, it does become effective tonight, but there is a 21-day input period by the union if they have some concerns or comments about it that may come back for your consideration in making any changes to the policy.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion around the policy? Again, this was one where the personnel committee, subcommittee, we recommended bringing it to the full commission for approval.
And same with finance committee.
Okay, thank you, Dave. So if there's no further discussion, I'll make a motion to approve the policy as submitted. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor of approving the policy for family and medical leave as submitted, signify by saying aye.
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 And anyone opposed? Hearing none, the policy as submitted is approved. Thank you for the work you guys did on that too. And the next agenda item is review and possible approval of the MOU with Local 311 around.
Yes, the short notice shifts. So again, the summary of this is something we saw last July, I believe is when we could trace it back to. Part of that same, if we reference back to the LTE policy and the incentive pay, another one of the recommendations that came from that work group to help reduce the number of mandates we have in the district was to potentially offer comp time to full-time employees who pick up hours with less than 24 hours notice. So there's kind of a little bit of a history here in contract language where comp time did go away 2 contracts ago. Here's the proposal to bring it back in. When we talked about it in July, we were just beginning contract negotiations, and since it is a benefit, decided to let it play out through the contract negotiations. It did come up in negotiations. It was deferred out of the negotiations, kind of back to the MOU as not being part of the contract, but to take this approach to it as a trial. Again, the proposal being maybe we can decrease mandates by offering an additional incentive to our full-timers who may not want double the pay, but may want it, earn it in comp time. So what this does is it defines what that comp time is. It is only for those shifts that are less than 24 hours notice. They can only bank up to 72 hours, which at time and a half would be 2 shifts. We have set a trial date for 6 months from February 1st for 6 months to reevaluate to see whether it did make a difference in reducing mandates. They can carry the bank down to the last pay period of the year. So they can't accrue it in this year at one salary and carry it over as a next pay rate into the next year. And it does have to be treated like our current vacation and paid time off, in which case they have to provide us with a 30-day notice to fill it for them, or they have to find their own coverage. That was one of the sticky points of the previous comp time. Is Fair Labor Standards Act does not define that. So this MOU does define, and they have tentatively agreed to treat it that way outside of FLSA. That's it. So yeah, again, to be a 6-month period, starting, I think, as the two subcommittees we talked, starting in February 1st and ending at the end of August with the reevaluation to see if it made a difference and to go from there.
And I don't know if you had mentioned, Patrick, but the comp time is at time and a half, unlike the mandates, which are at double time. I don't know if you had said that or not. You may have.
No, thank you. So that is one of their proposals of bringing it in. They would earn time and a half at comp time. A mandate is double time.
Okay, any more discussion? And this is another policy where the Personnel Subcommittee recommended bringing it to the full commission for approval.
And same with finance.
So go ahead.
I just had one quick question for Patrick. So you're going to sunset it in 6 months? Is it something that would automatically renew? Does it have to come back to the commission for approval we're going to do this continuously now from now on, so we don't continue to look at it?
The MOU specifically says it ends. The date isn't in there, but it will end. So on August 30th, this MOU will end, and I believe it in there says it will be reevaluated at that time. So it will have to come back to the commission, whether we want to renew it, extend it, or end it. It will automatically end. So I guess it's whether or not it wants to be extended or not.
Yeah, and the goal of it is to reduce mandated shifts, I guess, right?
Correct. That's what it says. The intent of this was to reduce mandates. So we started tracking that last year when we put in the incentive for the LTEs, along with we've changed the way we fill those shifts into allowing more time to fill those shifts before we mandate, which that has made a difference. So far, the LTE, as I mentioned earlier, the LTE suggestion did not make a statistical difference. So we'll see what happens with this to see if it does make a difference or not.
Yeah, and theoretically, it should be cost negative or not have a cost impact, right? At least.
It shouldn't cost any more. In theory, it actually would reduce it because we would not be paying double time for somebody to come work. What we would be doing is they would be accruing time off at time and a half, which gives in because they have to give me a 30-day notice. I can fill later open shifts with an LTE at a lower cost. So there should be no increased cost. Should be essentially
might even save a little. Yeah.
Should be net neutral and soft skill wise. If it reduces mandates, better. Yeah. Huge increase in morale.
Right. So any more discussion? If not, a motion to approve the MOU is submitted.
I'll move to approve, Lonsdorf.
Thank you. A second?
I second.
Thank you. All in favor of approving the MOU as submitted for earning of comp time, signify by saying aye.
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 And anyone opposed? Hearing none, the MOU with Local 311 for awarding comp time on a trial basis is approved. Thank you. And the last agenda item, I think, is review and approval of the accounts payable checks as submitted by Chief Anderson. Any discussion or questions? Hearing none. I'll make a motion to approve the checks, the accounts payable checks as submitted. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor of approving the accounts payable checks as submitted, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And anyone opposed? Hearing none, the accounts payable checks as submitted by Chief Anderson are approved. And any other business anybody wants to bring up?
I did have the GASB on there. We won't see that.
Oh,
Yeah,
I missed that one, sorry.
I had it on there, and when I put it on there, I wasn't thinking. So because it's a new fiscal year, I won't have those numbers until after the audit is done, what those prepaids and assets and liabilities are. So I'll take it off the agenda probably until April when we know what those new dedicated assigned funds will be.
Okay, and Patrick, next meeting probably will be in March.
Yep, so I put it on there. I think I shared with both subcommittees. I will actually be out of town for the third Thursday of February. If something comes up between now and then that does require a meeting, I have no doubts that Jeff will fill my seat here with extraordinary leadership and everything else. But at this point, we will not be a February meeting. We will meet in March.
Okay, unless Jeff calls a crisis meeting. Sounds good.
There will be no crisis that we can't handle.
I have a book recommendation if anyone would be interested. I was listening to NPR the other day, and they were talking about the history of the first paramedic squads in America. I don't know if anybody else heard that, but it was a black community in Pittsburgh in the 1960s. And Patrick, you're maybe familiar with this, or?
Yeah, about the Freedom House.
Yeah, the Freedom House. It's a very interesting story. The book's called American Sirens, and I think you can get it at the local library. And it's a very easy read. But if you're interested in the history of emergency services and paramedics, it's surprising where all got started and how. And I haven't read the whole book, so I can't tell you how it ends.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Very interesting. I'll have to get the book and read it. Any other business items people want to bring up? If not, a motion to adjourn.
So move.
And
Second.
the second. Thank you. All in favor of adjourning, signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for your support. We appreciate it.